Well, hello, Andrea. Thank you for joining us today.
Sure.
How are you?
Excuse me?
I said, how are you?
Oh, yeah, I'm perfectly fine. Yeah.
Oh, well,
I'm,
thank you for joining us today. This is our Experiencer interview series. My name is Susan with the UAP Medical Coalition, and I am a mental health provider. And before we get started, I need to read a disclaimer
mhm.
that this is not a therapy session and it is intended for use in educating mental health professionals on the challenges faced by UAP experiencers. All medical references are for informational purposes only. The views, thoughts, opinions expressed in this video blog solely to the speaker and not necessarily to UAP Med, its employees, volunteers, or affiliates. Some of the content may be triggering. Viewer discretion is advised. So thank you for being so patient with me. Can you
Okay.
please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Well, I'm a space engineer. I I'm a research manager at a Belgian university, and I basically lead teams developing a variety of technologies and modeling tools that range from modeling, let's say, astrophysical phenomena like space weather, or in particular the solar atmosphere,
Mhm.
and flows around space vehicles, what is called reentry. And yeah, so my interest in UAP started very early because my first experience was when I was 8 years old in 1983,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, and actually I became an aerospace engineer because of that first sighting. It sort of motivated me later on when I wanted to decide what to do in life to study something that could maybe one day get me closer to understand what I saw that particular night. That was not the first experience, that was just the beginning. But yeah, it was definitely a very important event in my life.
Oh, I can imagine. Can you tell us a little bit about your UAP experience?
For
It
sure.
sounds like you've had several.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. So the first one, I was in Italy. It was August 1983. I don't remember the exact date, but probably it was around the 15th of August. And so this was a seaside village in the northwest of Italy called Celle Ligure. I was chatting with my parents on a balcony, and at some point there is this object appearing at the same level of the balcony, so maybe 45 feet from the ground or something like that. We were on the
Mhm.
third floor, and then like 30 feet in front of us. And as soon as I look at the object started spinning super fast, like thousands of RPM. And
Wow.
while spinning, it started glowing and then started shrinking in size till it disappeared while emitting a flash of light. And then I turned on my left to my mother and said, "What was that?" And she's no scientist. And she said,
Mhm.
maybe it was a falling star. And
Mhm.
well, I was only 8 years old, but I knew that that was not a falling star.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that was the first experience. And I didn't have any other experience for many years. So actually, the second time that something anomalous happened to me is during the last year of university, 1999, 2000. So, well, what happened is that night I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was totally paralyzed. I was feeling levitating, and I was feeling this very intense vibration throughout my body. I have been in earthquakes a couple of times in Turin, and I can say that that was something very different. So
Mhm.
the every single part of my body was like subject to a very intense, very high frequency vibration. And I was also hearing a very, let's say, high pitch sound, increasing in frequency by the second, almost like the drill of the dentist, but increasing. I mean, suppose that you increase the rotation of the drill like infinitely, so it keeps on going up and up, more and more acute and high pitch. So of course I panicked and I prayed. At the time I could consider myself Catholic, and I prayed Mother Mary, and it stopped immediately.
Mm.
And then I said, what was that? And in the matter of, I would say, days, weeks, it happened again, the exact same thing. And this time, I panicked, I prayed, and it stopped. So this time I went on internet, and I look in forums for people having similar experiences. And somebody was mentioning transition phases during out-of-body experiences. I never heard about that kind of stuff, but and other people were mentioning abductions. Of course, during these years, I had researched UFOs and paranormal and whatever. But yeah, for what I knew about abductions is that typically people were seeing something, and I wasn't seeing absolutely anything. And of course, there was also the neurological, the most conventional explanation. Well, it was a sleep paralysis, very normal. No, I don't believe it was normal at all, because the number of different effects that I was experiencing were really like anomalous, I would say. But anyway, so what happened is it happened again. This time I was prepared, and I was, let's say, because some people were saying, okay, just, if you have an experience like that, just see how it goes. Don't panic. There is nothing to risk. And so that's what I did. This time I was like shaking, feeling this shaking, and I was like, okay, let's see how far it goes, and it stopped. And then, yeah, nothing happened for many, many more years. So again, I have to go to 2006. I had already moved to Belgium, to Brussels, and it happened again 2 or 3 times. I don't remember, at least two, maybe three. But again, I remember the previous time I said, I don't panic. I want to see how far it goes. And it stopped. And actually, in one of these cases, actually, I was waken up by my ex-girlfriend who was sleeping next to me, and apparently felt me shaking incredibly strong, let's say. And then she touched me, and then I said, I mean, it was not just the vibration. I was also hearing this sound. And after that, I think, I mean, this never happened again. And yeah, again, for many years, I didn't have anything. I had an experience which was interesting in 2016, and this was what I could call a premonition, and a very relevant one, because it was the premonition of the terrorist attack in Brussels that would happen only 2 days later. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, so what happened is I was walking close to the central station in Brussels, and I was stopped by two ladies. They introduced themselves as teachers, and they say, well, we are here with our classrooms and with a bunch of kids, and we would like to visit the Museum of Waterloo, the Napoleon Museum. And there you get already two synchronicities. First of all, two Italian ladies stop speaking in English, an Italian guy. And the other thing is that I happen to work close to Waterloo and actually go to Waterloo every single day for lunch. So the best possible person to ask in probably the city, So
Yeah.
so basically, yeah, I told them, okay, where are you located? They said, yeah, we have a hotel nearby the station. I said, look, very easy. You take the train, one stop, and then you take the bus, and it drives you directly there. And then they said, well, but we would like to try the metro with the kids. And then in that moment, as soon as they said metro, I had this image in my head of terrorist attack. And I thought,
Mm.
in the metro in Paris. But actually, in Paris, there was a terrorist attack, but it didn't involve the metro. But of course, I had this visual, and it was like, I had some sensation, but I didn't say anything, because And I just said, okay, look, I don't advise you to go and take the metro, first of all, because it's not the most efficient way to go there. And then if you take it early in the morning, you will find a lot of people like, and it will be difficult to handle it with all these students. And so what happened is, this was on a Sunday, and then on a Tuesday, there was the terrorist attack. And my mother mentioned some sort of interview to some guy, and I tried to find it on internet. And instead of finding the interview to this guy, a survivor, let's say, I actually found a journal article that were with the picture of these two teachers with all their kids. They actually took the metro. They took it they took the one before the one that exploded, following the same path. And
Wow.
so, yeah, they consider themselves like having received a miracle, and then they were taken back to Italy with a private jet from the embassy. But you know, it was a very interesting story. I mean, with a lot of synchronicities, and then even this sort of confirmation, sort of, full round loop at the end. Mm.
Mhm.
Anyway, so 2016, I can even show you if you want the article. I every time that something happened to me, I keep track. Do you want me to?
Yeah. After any of these experiences, did you have any physical effects, positive or negative?
Mm, well, let's say not after the. Well, I could come back on this later, but only if I can show something.
Okay.
But there is something that happened in the year after the first sight in 1983. Um, I lost a bit of eyesight, and like 175 in each eyes. And that was sort of unusual because in my whole family, and I have a huge family, like I think 18 I mean, 17 siblings on the side of my father and 5 on the side of my mother, plus cousins and everything. In my whole family, I was the only one who ended up wearing glasses. So I don't know if there was a relation because I saw these objects so close, I mean, like 30 feet. But it's interesting that, yeah, I got this problem like few months after having had the sighting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and apart from that, as I would like to show, recently I did some tests with some so-called hyperspectral cameras that are able to see in a enlarged range between the ultraviolet and the infrared. And basically, these cameras are able to visualize your what they call the biophotonic field, and they are able to characterize in terms of energy, frequency, and other stuff. And there is, yeah, and basically in this specific spectrum, there is a very well-defined structure around my eyes, which looks like a mask. And normally you would have this kind of, I mean, it looks like it's blocking the light, but the engineers that did the test, they say, did you have a facial surgery? Did they implant some metal in your face or something? I said, no, I never had
Oh,
anything like that. And actually, I also had MRI in the past, and you don't see anything in the MRI. So it's just some sort of energetic imprint that is very anomalous. I mean, I can show the comparison with other people, and absolutely, this is not something you see in other people. Um, I don't consider I don't consider my let's say experiences negative in any way, actually.
uh-huh.
So because of what happened later on, that let's say when I
When
mm,
you
connect.
you know when you described the experience like 2016 around that when you were having the vibrations, did
Mhm.
you ever seek any medical profession or professional help?
No, absolutely not.
So with none of these you did?
Hmm?
None of these experiences you ever sought medical help?
No, no, because
Hmm.
I sort of figured that this was something anomalous that a doctor wouldn't have been able to help, and I didn't really want help. I mean, for me
Sure.
it was an interesting experience, So,
For sure. How
and
about emotionally?
as I
Have,
said, the first two times, I mean, I was, yeah, in the moment, it's something that you don't expect. So I
yeah.
was a bit panicking, but after, it's not that I was scared or anything, but I didn't talk to anybody. I don't think I mentioned this for even to, definitely not to my parents, not to any friends, for like, I don't know, maybe. I think that the first time I mentioned it was to my ex-girlfriend when she woke me up. And then I said, well, this was not the first time. So, mm,
And
yeah,
how did she react when you told her?
I mean, she's very skeptic on anything. So we weren't really on the same wavelength on a lot of things. She wasn't spiritual. She wasn't into any kind of paranormal or UFO. She was even disturbed by talking about these things. So, I knew that, and I didn't really, I mean, dig too further. I mean, too much
Hmm.
further. But we did experience something together, sort of uh,
Uh-huh.
the year after. So in 2000, so wait, 2006 was the last episode, with the sort of sleep paralysis.
Oh,
But then in 2017, so 11 years later, I had another UFO encounter, and this was very interesting because I sort of triggered it. So basically, I was looking at the night sky, and in my mind, I thought, how cool would be to have another experience like the one that I had when I was a child. Um, Now that I'm an aerospace engineer, and maybe I could look at details and stuff like that. And then 10 minutes later, I go to the bedroom. So I go from the second floor where I was, let's say, sky watching, to the first floor in the bedroom. My ex-girlfriend was lying already on the bed, and she made me notice that there was a very strange noise in the background. So it was some sort of metallic squeaking, a very high pitched sound, which didn't fit with anything I really, I mean, could attach it to, but
hmm.
and especially 1 o'clock in the night. And so I kept my eyes open, and I was staring at the ceiling. And then in the matter of few minutes, I see a ray of light, green light, bright green light, entering from the window. And then in a matter of few seconds, the whole room is completely enlightened in bright green light at 1 o'clock in the night. And then
Wow.
and then I turned to her and said, let's go to the window. And what she said sort of surprised me in that moment. She said, no, let me sleep. And she turned her face towards the wall. And then I jumped to the window. I had this moment in which I said, well, I pulled the curtain. I see these two discs of bright green light that were moving together, and they were just flying over my backyard, very, very low in altitude, at least apparently. And then they flew over the neighbor's roof. They were moving very slowly. And so there was this moment at the very beginning, as soon as I saw them, um, I had my iPhone 4 by the window. The problem is I knew that it was difficult to switch it on because I had a problem with the button.
Uh-huh.
And so I said, if I lose seconds trying to switch it on and then go to the photo app, I will miss it. So I said, okay, whatever, let's look. And so I saw, these two discs. So they were too big to be like a drone of some kind. It was the diameter of each of them was probably 6, 7 feet, and it was
Oh, wow.
just a single very bright green light as I've never seen before. No sound whatsoever, and there was nothing else. There was no rotor, no nothing. And then I went upstairs to see if I could see further the roof of the neighbor, but I couldn't see anything. And the interesting thing is that talking to my girlfriend, let's say the day after, I said, why weren't you curious to see it? No, she never really had an answer. Like, it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's like her mind shut off. And then she still remembered that for some time, let's say months. But then if I ask her now about this event, she doesn't remember at all, which I find very interesting.
Very interesting.
She kept the memory for like months, and but then yeah, and then especially she got pissed once that I mentioned this event to some of her friends, and this was in 2017 before we broke up, and then now 7 years later, if you mention that, she doesn't remember it at all. So I don't know.
Huh. Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
You
So
see?
please share.
Okay, so I will just jump to the one that I wanted to show you before.
Hmm.
It's a long presentation. I probably won't cover everything, but we cover what is relevant for this interview.
Hmm.
I'm just trying to. Okay, so this is the article I was mentioning. So
Yeah.
these two are the ladies, and I didn't see the kids because they weren't with them when I met
Hmm.
them. But yeah, so interesting. And yeah, later on, I'm gonna, let's say I can show maybe already these experiments, but there is a story before getting to the experiments. Um, so let's say that after 2017, um, again, nothing happens for about a year. And then in February 2018, I had another experience, which to me felt a bit like mystical. So what happened is, again, I was stargazing, so to speak. And normally, since I live close to downtown Brussels, you cannot see more than maybe 20 stars or something because of the light pollution. And
Hmm.
that night, I was seeing the Orion Belt and a few other stars all around. And again, I thought, well, can you do it again? Can I have another experience? Okay. And then what happened is, this time, in a matter of a minute, I would say, lights started appearing everywhere. It was like an avalanche of lights. And in the matter of maybe, as I said, minute, the whole sky was completely covered by lights. Thousands, everywhere. Everywhere I was looking, there were lights. And then I was like, am I dreaming or what? So I was touching myself. Then I opened the window. So it was February, so pretty cold, to feel the cold air. And then when I opened the window, I also saw a fireball of purple light crossing the Orion belt. And then after that, I was like, whoa, this is really something. It's the second time
Yeah.
I try in 1 year, and I have almost like some sort of response. And then the day after, I tried again and nothing happened. So I stayed there. I was like, can you do it again? Can you do it again? And nothing happened. So I was seeing, 20 stars, 30 stars, and that's it. And I said, okay, well, it seems that sometimes they respond, but it's not something that you can control. I mean, but
Hmm.
at that point, I had an interesting experience because few, let's say, weeks after this event, I had an accident at home and I broke my left ankle. So I had surgery the day after, and I had to stay 6 weeks at home. And then yeah, during this period, I basically had a lot of time to kill because I was on a sick leave, and I spent a lot of time watching videos and reading about how to try to establish contact. And
Hmm.
also I dug more into some spirituality, or let's say spiritual aspects of you know UFOs and contact with entities. And yeah, and then after that, once I recovered, I started meeting people that were on a similar path, and they gave me some hints. You can try this, you can try that. And so I tried meditation, I tried hypnosis. And then also I started, let's say, taking part to some sessions in which there was some shamanic music involved, drumming or singing bowls. And every time I was trying something, there was something happening. I was feeling energies through the body. At the beginning, I wasn't seeing really anything, actually. Maybe some lights during these sound healing sessions associated with pressure in specific chakras, you know, the energy points in the body.
Mm-hmm.
Then yeah, I got interested into reincarnation and ways to access other lives, and I did experiments on that too. I spent, you know, a lot of time investigating a lot of things, and then at some point around 2019, I met with well, with a YouTuber that I had followed for some time in LA, and let's say she basically does some sort of psychic readings,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to ask her, yeah, information about why was I having this kind of experiences, and she gave me some interesting, let's say, things to think about. And right after this experience, I started having contacts with some entity that I couldn't see, but you know, I know it was there. So let's say that during the session was like about 1 hour long. Maybe I have
Mm-hmm.
something about that. Okay, so this was the session. This is the girl. And so what happened is during the session at 30 minutes, 00 seconds, so I had the audio recording. So exactly at that point, we start talking and acknowledging the fact that there was a hummingbird that entered our space. And this
Mm-hmm.
hummingbird behaved in a very weird way. So it went straight towards my face, almost like wanted to hit me. And then he turned, and then he went straight towards her, almost trying to hit her, and then he went back, and then it stayed there, hovering in between us, as he wanted to assist to the conversation, and he stayed there for some time. Then at some point he flew away. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Around that moment, she was telling me that she was seeing an entity behind my back that looked like a giant mantis, and this mantis, according to what she said, introduced himself as Gala, and he said, "I'm a spirit guide, and I've been following Andrea since he was a child." And I found this interesting. And then when I was going back from LA to San Diego, in fact, I was on a business trip. I had been on a space conference before, and basically what I did is I Googled Gala
Mm-hmm.
mantis being, and here you can see the screenshot. So interestingly enough, the first link that came up was connecting mantis with hummingbird, which is something
Oh,
that is
wow.
a bit counterintuitive, isn't it? And so I was familiar with synchronicities. I had other experiences before, and that let's say trigger my attention. And also the interesting thing is that if I wouldn't put Gala, which was the name of the entity, this link would not come out. So I had to put these three words exactly in the same order. And so what happened is a month later, I developed some sort of skin infection in my leg, and it got to the point that it was really painful, and I decided to go to the doctor. That day, I said, what's the message of the day? I went on my phone and I Google again, Gala mantis being. This time, and unfortunately, I didn't take a screenshot, but believe me, this time the first link that appeared was connecting mantis with parasites. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And again, I also did the same test. I didn't put Gala, and this would not appear. So I went to the doctor, and she said, well, you know, I think you probably got some bacteria and stuff. So I got antibiotics, and actually I got rid of the problem. So bacteria, parasites.
Mm-hmm.
And then the day after, I try again, and I couldn't find this link. So it was almost like there was some form of communication, which was very
Uh-huh.
counterintuitive through synchronicities and through my phone and through Googling this kind of thing. But then the biggest synchronicity was 2 months later. So this was April 2019. I was flying from Belgium to Italy, back home to visit my parents. And I was the only one sitting by the window on my row of seats.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a full view on the window, and I saw this big scratch on the window that you see here, oh, on the wing, sorry. And I took a picture, and then later on, I was like, whoa, but this reminds me of a mantis. And so actually, I remember to have seen a video in which somebody was talking about contacting these entities. And then, you see this kind of pose here. You see this kind of
Yeah.
head, big eyes, even the nose, and it's even in perspective, and it's a spirit. So how do you imagine a spirit to wear a robe, right? And so
Right.
it's like it's wearing a robe. So I mean, I mean, considering what had happened before, I said, well, this looks like another funny synchronicity. And anyway, later on, I did a regression under hypnosis, and I saw.
I was going to ask you, yeah, you did do some hypnosis then?
I did some hypnosis, but not to investigate these possible abductions or anything. I wanted to investigate past lives.
Okay.
And anyway, so what I basically got at some point in the visuals that I had, I saw this entity, and in I mean in a lot of details. And then later on, let's say a year later, during a shamanic session, with shamanic music, it was not like plant medicine or anything. It was just music. I saw him again. But yeah, so this was interesting. So this year, between 2019, 2020, a lot of experimentation with what I said. And then there was this very, let's say, sort of life-changing experience, which was an initiation to Shaktipat meditation. So I met a new, let's say, Belgian friend, and she spent a lot of time in India, and she got initiated into this kind of meditation called Shaktipat. So the gurus are called Swami, and she said, I think with the experiences that you have had, maybe would be a good idea to try this initiation. Maybe it will bring you something. And so we arranged a group meditation, and it was like me, her, and two friends of her, and it was a freestyle. There was no protocol. We had agreed with this Swami remotely, he was in India, that he would do the initiation. I didn't know what he would do. But so I closed my eyes, and as soon as I close my eyes, I see a certain spirit. Now, here I could go back to, let's say, to 2000. In 2000, before leaving Belgium, there was something called there was basically the exhibition of the Holy Shroud of Turin. Have you heard about
Mm-hmm.
it? So
Yes, yes.
yeah, so basically I had the chance. I was still living in Turin. I had the chance to see the Holy Shroud. It didn't really affect me very much, but I said, okay, well, one thing more that I did in my life. But then a few months later, right before moving to Belgium, I was at a marriage, and I met this uncle who had just gone to a pilgrimage in the south of Italy. The pilgrimage was to celebrate a new saint called Padre Pio. And he's not religious. I think his wife a little bit more. But anyway, he joined this pilgrimage. And during this pilgrimage, they met this friend, this woman, who was basically taking random pictures of the sky with an analogical camera, so not a digital one.
Mm-hmm.
And when the film was developed, instead of the sky with the clouds, this face appeared in one of the pictures, and nobody could explain where this face came from. And so, I'm interested in strange stuff. So I said, well,
Uh-huh.
give me a copy of that. I will keep it in one of my books. So I kept this picture, a copy of this picture, for like, I don't know, 18 years in one of my books. And then when I found it back in 2018 or something, I was like, oh, wow, this picture. Yeah, I never really thought about this again. So why do I mention this? Because when I did this initiation to Shaktipat, as soon as I close my eyes, I see exactly this spirit dressed in white, and in a lotus pose with a blue aura surrounding him. And then I saw him walking, almost like in a movie, very, very vivid visual of him walking next to an entity which was looking very extraterrestrial and wearing a purple robe instead. And then I was like, whoa, it's the first time that in meditation I have such a clear visual. And the visual basically stayed there during the whole meditation. It was maybe 45 minutes or something. There was not a single moment in which I wasn't seeing this spirit. And the interesting thing is that after the meditation, my friend said, oh, I have to tell you something. I had clear visual of the spirit. So she described the same spirit, but dressed in purple. And yeah, and then she said, well, I saw him, basically, well, it sounds very, mystic, but what she saw is a sort of crystal staircase forming behind my back. And then she saw the spirit walking down and putting his hand on my shoulder and saying, he's my worker or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, whoa, this is incredible. No, we both saw the same spirit. And then after that, like in the matter of some days, I had scheduled, it was already locked down, so you couldn't meet in person for sessions or whatever. And I had scheduled with a friend of mine who does this session with sound healing, with the shamanic drumming, a remote session. And the purpose of the session was basically to rebalance my chakra, what they do with Reiki or whatever. And I said, okay, well, let's see. Every time that there was something to try, I was like, okay, let's see what happens. No? And so I was lying on my bed, and I had my laptop on my left. I was playing this drumming that was pre-recorded, and eyes closed. Let's say, at the beginning, 5 minutes into this session, I felt absolutely nothing, and then suddenly I feel like a tingling on the top of my fingers, and then in the matter of a few seconds, it propagates all the way to my shoulder. So both my arms got paralyzed. And then I feel a very strong, almost like a spinning energy, as I was on a rotating table. That's how I could describe it. I feel even also a sort of force that pushes my head a little up, and then my eyelids start flickering, start fluttering. I had a similar experience, not with the arms paralyzed, but this spinning energy during a previous session with this, a group session with this friend. But this time it was really much more powerful. And then at the same time that my eyelids were flickering, the laptop experienced some problem with the connection. So it was almost synchronously disconnecting together with my eyes. So there was energy involved, and even the laptop seemed to be affected. And then after that, I saw again the face of the spirit. Then I saw some entities that I had seen before during a hypnosis session, and the entities look like long-haired, round. Yeah, so this is a picture that I made describing these entities. So they were like, completely white, very, very long, very skinny, and round eyes, and almost like a piggy nose. The interesting thing is that recently I connected to a journalist who wrote about 4 books about UFOs and other stuff, but she used to be a news anchor for like 10 years on one of the major Italian TVs. But she was also interested in mysteries and everything connected to paranormal and UFOs. And she interviewed one woman that under hypnosis remembered an abduction, and in her abduction, she saw this entity, which looks not too far from mine, actually. I mean, the nose is like a piggy nose. The eyes are not the typical insectoid eyes that some associate to grays or whatever. It's really round eyes, and also small mouth, and especially the long neck. So maybe we are talking about the same entities. Who knows? But I saw them during this session that I was describing, and then I saw other entities that I sort of understood were my spirit guides, and I saw because I recognized the last one, which was the mantis, while the other ones I couldn't really see exactly all the features. I could see only colors. And what happened after this shamanic session is that things started happening for me quite profound. Like, let's say, about few weeks after this, I started meditating more regularly. So more regularly for me means once a week in a park at the same time. And so it was on Sunday, and I was meditating, like, I don't know, starting at 11:11, just to make it a bit more fancy. I did it once. The first time I felt energy on my leg, which I found a bit interesting, but nothing really extraordinary. Then the week after, I tried again. This time I had to stand up because police was actually patrolling the parks to prevent people even to sit during the pandemic. So the time, it was not the best time to have an experience. But then the week after, I said, okay, I will try another park. And I went to this other park. I found a spot where I've never been. I sit down, and then at some point, I have the same kind of experience. I feel this extraordinary energy. My eyelids start flickering, and I see again the spirit and then different entities. And there, I understood that something had opened up, and this time not with the help of music or of somebody else. It was just me meditating and having this experience. And so I started having messages, visuals, and at some point they told me, well, you can use this kind of meditation to have people having similar experience to yours and also healings. And then I said, oh, very interesting. Since you mentioned healings, of course, the dialogue was in my head with these entities that I was seeing. I said, okay, well, if you mention healings, I have actually an issue, which was I had a ligament injury on my left wrist, and it was a relapse. The first time I had to take a cortisone injection, and then I had an accident, and this thing came back, and I didn't want to take another cortisone injection. So it was already 5 months, and I was at the point that when I was lifting an empty cup, I would feel pain all the way up to the elbow. I said, okay, let's do an experiment. Can you heal my wrist? Of course, I wanted validation of some kind of these experiences. And so that day I go to the park with the intention of, seeing if I could get healing. And then I get there. At the time, I had extreme sensitivity to the sunlight. And that day, the sun was very strong, and I had forgotten my sunglasses at home. So instead of meditating, I go back home, go back to the park. So half an hour maybe passes, maybe more. And I sit there with my glasses, and then I had forgotten what was the intention, honestly. And I'm walking in the park after the meditation, and then I hear this internal voice, check your wrist. I was like, oh yeah, true. I had asked to have this healed. And then, yeah, it was really feeling different. And then I realized that I had no pain whatsoever. I could lift whatever I want, and it never came back since then.
It never came back.
One thing that I forgot is that in 2017, after having seen these green lights, that was a very bad period for me. I had let's say, a very severe health issue, extremely painful, and I had to take basically 11 months of, I had to work from home for 11 months. The pain was atrocious. There was no painkiller that could help me. And I honestly, I wasn't seeing a way through this thing. And I had scheduled a flight to San Francisco in April. So in March, I saw these two green discs. And then I realized that in a matter of, I would say, a week or two from that sighting, I recovered. I could fly to San Francisco. And then in San Francisco, I ate something that I knew could have triggered again the problem, and I got it again. But so it was interesting to have this sort of sighting, then a sort of healing, maybe connected to that, maybe not. After, at the time it was 8 or 9 months of suffering. and then again I fall back, but it was my fault, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so now I got this healing. And then I said, okay, well, I wanted some proof. I got some proof. So let's follow the advices of whoever I'm connecting to. And so they were saying, okay, try meditating with other people. Then I invite friends one by one to meditate next to me in the same park. And people start feeling energies, start feeling certain things. Like the first friend that I invited feels some sort of energy in her back. Then we start walking, and then she looked at me, and she was completely paralyzed. So she was, you know, standing up. She could only talk, but she could not move a finger for like half a minute. And then suddenly it was almost like released, and she sort of collapsed on a bench. She said, "Okay, let me, you know, rest a bit." I don't know what happened. So, well, there was some physical effect for sure. And then, yeah, I started doing group meditations, and people were seeing entities, were feeling energies, feeling better. Like some people had emotional troubles, or even there was a girl who was recovering from cancer, and this cancer never came back after that. But you know, she was feeling much better during this session, so she was coming all the time. Um, and then I started also, at the same time, I created a page on Facebook, and I was doing these meditations, also involving remotely people in United States or Canada or whatever, and without even eye contact. I would say, okay, we start meditating at this time, and you have to listen to this music. And then if you have some effect that you want to report, you just contact me the day after, or we have a Zoom chat. It turned out that this became quite successful, and I connected with hundreds of people, and these people were having experiences similar to the one that I was having at the beginning, feeling energies and feeling, you know, seeing entities or stuff like that. Always positive experiences. Like sometimes maybe they had issues, and then after the meditation, they would feel better. And so at some point, I wanted to have, let's say, there are a lot of experiences that I could discuss. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but let's say I cut it a little bit to go to the experiments. So at some point I said, okay, people are having these experiences, and I would like to see if we can find a way of getting some measurements of the effects of this meditation. So I contacted the Institute of Noetic Sciences. I got connected, especially with the director of research, Elané Wabe, and I had a limited budget. I mean, my budget is for research in space and astrophysics, and I had just a little spare budget that I could use for whatever I wanted, as long as scientific in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay, I have this budget. Can we arrange something? So what she proposed was to recruit 11 expert meditators and try a protocol in which basically they would try a freestyle meditation, their own way, and then a meditation that I had pre-recorded on video. And then in all cases, they would be connected to a 64-channel EEG so that they could monitor variations in, let's say, the activity in the brain waves. And so we decided to go for it. And here I can show some results. So what this experiment showed is that for each of the 11 meditators, when you look at their scalp topographies, there are considerable differences across all ranges of brain waves, depending on the subject. In some cases, it's like across 4, in some cases, it's across 5 or 2 or 1, but they always find considerable differences. And so if I look here, for instance, on the left, you see the scalp topography for the control meditation, and then in the second column is for the what I call Stargate meditation, and then in the third, whenever you see a red electrode, means that there is a considerable difference in that specific electrode. So for this subject one, across let's say delta, so here it's delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma. So for delta, alpha, beta, gamma, all the electrodes experience a considerable difference in, you know, electrical stimulation. So in the cases of four to six of these meditators, the experience also translated into some some effects like energies, seeing entities, having almost like a psychedelic experience, similar to consistent, let's say, with the experiences that all the other people that had tried my meditation in the months before had experienced. But there were also cases in which there were considerable differences in the EEG, but the person didn't notice a difference between his own meditation and the other one. So it's like their brain is electrically stimulated in a different way, but this doesn't translate in any effect that they can consciously recognize, which was interesting. Of course, would be nice to test more than 11. Of course, everything goes with the budget. So at some point, yeah, this was what I could afford at the time. And then more recently, I connect through this journalist that I mentioned before, the one that also interviewed this abductee that showed the picture of this entity. I connected to two engineers. They develop cameras that basically can see in an enlarged spectrum, typically between 300 nanometers and 1300, or so near ultraviolet to near infrared. These kind of cameras can be used for a lot of things. They can use to monitor even the mental state of people. If when you are depressed, they see that the energy is lower, they can visualize it. They can visualize the activity of the pineal gland. So, this pineal gland is very popular in whatever ancient spiritual culture or whatever. So it's supposed to be some sort of antenna, and actually when they analyze it with the electronic microscope, they actually see that it's covered by crystals. So it can actually exploit some sort of piezoelectric effect. So when you compress a crystal, you generate electricity, and that's probably how this thing works. But so these cameras are able to focus, let's say the visualization or the analysis on specific points of the body, and then visualize what happened in there. And so what they see is, with meditators, they see some sort of torsional field forming around the pineal gland and spanning different frequencies. So different colors correspond to different frequencies in this picture. So they wanted to test this kind of technology. And I said, okay, I believe I'm connecting to something like a Stargate. And I did some EEG tests, and I would like to see if you can see some other effects with your cameras. So they brought two different cameras. One was a polarimetric camera, so able to characterize the polarization of the light. And the other one was like, the one that I showed before, also for the pineal gland and everything. And before me, they had already tested about 30 people, not necessarily experiencer, some meditators, some normal people. And during the same session, they also, together with me, they also tested the journalist who was hosting the experiment as a reference. And she was looking normal, let's say, as most of the people that they tested before. So normally in this specific energy spectrum, let's say the highest level of energy is concentrated in the eyes. So the highest level of energy appears as white light. And it's interesting because there is this saying, the eyes are the window for the soul. And actually, with this kind of devices, they can actually show something like that. But in my case, even when I'm not meditating, I look like this. So the highest level of energy is concentrated around my whole face, except for this area, which looks almost like a mask. And as I mentioned before, the first question that they ask me is like, did you have a facial surgery? Did they install some metal? Because this is blocking the light. Yeah, so we did the test, and then there are a bunch of anomalies that come out apart from this, which is striking.
Yeah.
When I start meditating, there is a toroidal field that forms around my head and occasionally forms a cross in my face. And then when they analyze the differences in in frequency, they also see similar patterns. So the frequency it's concentrated in the eyes in most people. In my case, is equally distributed throughout my face. They also tested me with the other device. This device mounts a sensor which comes from a space agency. I'm sorry, but I cannot stop it. Okay. So these are the tests. This is a different camera. And so basically what they do is they focus their attention on different points around my body, which you see here. And then
Uh-huh.
as soon as I start meditating, they see that the light polarization changes in every single point. It's almost like as soon as I start meditating, there is something creating around me that affects energy, frequency, and the light polarization. Normally, in order to change the light polarization, the light has to cross a different medium, bump into a plasma region or a gravitational field or a strong electromagnetic field. So it's not normal. Like this should not happen. So they use two different devices and they both visualize some anomaly. And
How
then
do you think that your UAP experiences affect this? Because
yeah,
it almost seems like a journey from, when you were 8 years old with that first experience that
yes,
led you to this research.
indeed. So when we look at the structure, we actually think that this could be an energetic implant. So there are other abductees, who have reported to have had like some device, some little chips, or even organic material that was installed in their bodies, sometimes in places which were like really hard to reach, like I don't know, behind the ear, in the brain, in the thigh, wherever. But in my case, I don't think I have anything like that, but I have this. So I believe that some entities are able to actually just work on your energy field. It's also possible that, I wasn't taken physically. Maybe they beam you with something, with a, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, with a microwave or something at high frequency. They are able to take you out, take your energy body, do something on it, and then put you back. And I believe that this is what happened to me. Um, and then just want to show the last anomaly that they show. So when they try to check the activity of my pineal gland in the way I described before, normally when they do this test, you should only see something happening around this area. I mean, you cannot drill a hole in the head, so this is the closest you can get to the pineal gland. No, but the rest of the image should remain high quality. But what happens is that, consistent with everything that they show with the other tests, as soon as I start meditating, there is something strange that happens. So they see blast. I mean. Light, I mean, how do you say, light or a different frequency blasting off my body and also affecting the compression of the image. So the image gets corrupted. It's almost like in a disco.
Yeah. Wow.
Again,
Wow.
they've never seen anything like that. The first message that these entities told me is that I had connected to a Stargate, and what is a Stargate is some sort of energy and frequency filter that somehow helps to communicate in a more efficient way. It's a booster of communication.
Okay.
And I tested it on myself. I tested it with people, and I even have, some two different, very sophisticated pieces of equipment that show that there is something going on. Yeah, so I definitely think that this connection has brought me this kind of anomalies. Um,
And and how has this affected you?
mm,
Like
I mean, I'm
like these
healthier.
psychological, like it sounds like you might even have some psychic abilities.
Indeed.
Maybe
Mhm.
even healing. And I mean, how has this affected your life?
Well, of course, it's a big component of my life. So what at the beginning was some maybe isolated, extraordinary experience became, almost part of my daily lives. There have been periods in which I've had things happening all the time. And actually, sorry, I just want to show you another thing which proves
Mhm.
that there has been a change somehow. Uh, um, this is another thing that happened. When I meditate, I often connect immediately after. I connect to wild animals like birds. Like here, I'm petting a crow. Here, I'm holding a little bird, or this one, or dragonflies, and I do
Wow.
consciously experiment some time of communicating with these insects or whatever, and they come to me. And it always happens after meditation. I also have some other anomalies. Sometimes, for instance, after meditation, I was with a friend. We did this meditation, and my phone switched off. I switched it on, and it was at 10% of charge. Now it
Hmm.
was an iPhone 7 with a 5-year-old battery. Normally, with 10% of charge, it shouldn't have survived more than a few minutes. But what happened is
No.
this phone lasted at 10% of charge, so without, let's say, losing a single percent for 10 hours, even if I was using it. And this is physically impossible.
Yeah.
So, and then during the night, and I was showing this to the friend after hours and hours, I was like, look, the phone is still at 10%. How is that? And she was laughing, no? And then during the night, I look at the phone and I said, what's going on with you? And then what happened is I saw a little orb of light coming off the phone, going on the left, and then the phone discharged completely in the matter of few minutes, as it should have done 10 hours before.
Hmm.
Now, how do you explain that? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Good. I don't
It
know.
it violates any known physics, So so I have this kind of experiences, and for instance, if you look at these two videos, this is a particular story. So I was in the forest, I was meditating, and then I was seeing for the first time an entity which was looking like with a bird head and almost humanoid, with let's say a body of a human, but up to here, completely white. And I said, okay, if it's true that I connected to you, give me a sign.
Hmm.
So I walk out of the forest and I go drinking a coffee with a friend. And then there is this magpie coming from around the corner, walking around the tables, and then coming to me and start biting my jeans. So he wasn't afraid. Normally, if you try to approach a magpie, and I try sometimes,
Hmm.
there's no way. Even if you bring food, they just fly away. This guy
Yeah.
came consciously to me. I mean, with no fear, and that was interesting. And then I go home the same evening, and there was this little bird trapped in my backyard, unable to fly. So I brought it home. And when I brought it home, it immediately jumped on this. So under the right in love. So I kept it,
Wow.
yeah, I kept it there for during the night. And then the day after, I let it fly away from a window. But so you cannot think that all this is by chance.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of these kind of experiences, and sometimes with witnesses, like with other people seeing what was happening. And every time
Hmm.
that something happens, if I can, document it in some way, like picture, videos, whatever, I keep track of everything. So this presentation that I'm showing you is growing out of proportion. So,
Yeah. How
but
do people respond to you when you tell them about this?
well, I have to say, I don't know if I'm lucky to meet people that are already open-minded, but yeah, sometimes they change their perspective. It's like yeah, you don't hear so many of these stories, and especially all this variety of experiences. And yeah, most of these actually happened between I would say 2019 and now. So in the last 5 years, let's say 2018, after I broke my leg. So in the last 6 years, I had all kind of experiences, and other people are affected. There are people who change their lives. I mean, for instance, yeah, the one that now is my girlfriend. So she was also one of those who tried the meditation remotely. She was in Florida, and then she felt something, and then I did some sort of session one-to-one. So at some point, I told you that I was experimenting to access memories of other lives. At some point, this thing became natural,
Mm.
to the point that I can see the one of other people, and in some cases, it results in healings. So she um, she was suffering for, let's say, from 8 allergies to 6 kind of nuts, to banana, and to chocolate. And I said, okay, let's try this. They call it Akashic record reading. So you basically connect to a field that stores information of, consciousness, and so basically I get these images, and I see sometimes writings, I hear a narration, and in this case I was like, okay, let's do some experiments. And she said, okay, let's try with the banana, for instance. So what happened with banana is that if she would eat banana, she would get sort of suffocation sensation,
Hmm.
and also get stuff in her skin. And so when I connected, uh, let's say, to her higher self or spirit guides or whatever, the information that I got is that there were 2 lives in which she died. In one, she was a young boy, or I don't remember if boy or girl, but anyway, young kid suffocated while eating a banana. In another life, um, was a guy working in Brazil in a plantation of banana and got a heart attack for the overwork. And so in both lives, the last memory that this soul had was bananas. After I told her that, she immediately tested it. So she asked the daughter to bring a banana, and the daughter was like, "Are you crazy? You will end up
Yeah.
in hospital." She broke it in two. She ate half a banana, and she had no effects. Then
Mm.
I tried with cashews. Cashews was like, she was extremely allergic to cashews. She would basically get rashes all over her body, blisters and everything. Same thing. I don't remember exactly what kind of information I gave her. I remember the one for chocolate. Imagine a life without chocolate. That was
No,
a
I can't.
Yeah, that was her life. She would get blisters inside her mouth and outside and stuff. So in that case, I saw one life in which she was a toddler in Ethiopia. Sometimes I get very detailed information, even names, but depends how much I dig. But anyway, so this one was a toddler, and she liked to go around collecting cocoa beans. And one day she got stung by a bee, and she died. And
Mm.
when the parents found her, and I happened to be one of the parents in that life, they saw a cocoa bean rolling out from her hand. So her last memory in that life was a cocoa bean.
Hmm.
After I told her that, massive quantities of chocolate, no problem. So yeah, placebo effects, it's still not well understood, by the way.
Yeah.
But here, it's not I'm not the only one saying that this kind of procedures can help. Like there is, for instance, the quantum healing hypnosis technique, or there is the Brian Weiss method. they you have a lot of people who have really serious diseases, and sometimes they just do a regression under hypnosis, and then they heal.
Yeah.
So there is something, and I'm very convinced that there is something. But so these contacts brought me somehow to have a more spiritual view. Uh,
Hmm.
I wasn't religious, honestly. I mean, when I was maybe younger, but always with doubts. I wasn't really, like, never really somebody that would just take everything like exactly as the priest was saying, or the Bible was saying. I never read the Bible, for instance.
Hmm.
But yeah, so this connection brought me to a different level of spirituality, a different level of connection to nature, to animals. I became vegan, and that was actually one of the requests that I got at the very beginning, that I had to change my diet to increase the ability to connect. And I have to say, it I think it worked. But
Really?
and yeah, so
Wow, that's been incredible. I mean, your journey, all of these experiences seem definitely linked together. Um, as we wrap up tonight, do you have any last minute thoughts or anything that you would think is important for other experiencers or mental health professionals to know?
well, I think it's important that people who had experiences that they couldn't, I mean, really understand or contextualize, they try to talk about it, starting maybe with close friends. And it can be difficult even with close friends. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
have some close friends that absolutely don't want to hear this kind of stuff. But, find an anchor within your circle and you definitely will find somebody. And then eventually, yeah, if you are traumatized, if you and I know people had bad experiences, yeah, definitely they should try maybe to reach out to organizations like yours. They cannot just go to a psychologist, uh, because psychologists are not prepared for this kind of stories. They would just consider them, I don't know, schizophrenic or
Yeah, that's entirely possible. What do you think might help change their minds?
Well, I think they should research more this topic, but this comes from them. You cannot impose it on them. So I think it's important to do what you are doing. For instance, interviewing more and more people. It helps if unfortunately, it helps if you have so-called high profile people, because
Yes.
for some distortion in their mind, they think that somebody with a PhD is more reliable than maybe a farmer or a plumber. I don't agree with this kind of view. I never agreed with this kind of view. My parents are factory workers, so but. But yeah, unfortunately, society, is organized in that way. So I think it's important to have people, let's say, with a certain status, sharing these experiences, and then eventually go to all the others. Um, and yeah, I mean, and of course, it's important at some point to get more visibility for this kind of stories. Uh,
Yeah.
like Joe Rogan, for instance. I mean, if you look at these big podcasts that are followed by millions of people, they never really discuss, for instance, abductions. Like, so, but they are starting looking into strange stuff too. So you never know.
Yeah, no, it's true.
So
That's
yeah,
true.
it's a long road, I think, and I think there is a reason why the abduction, especially the abduction topic, is something that is really forbidden. Like you can talk about the technologies, but when you talk about this kind of interaction, they want to shut down the conversation. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, we have to
So
change it.
yes, I think with people like you say, that are sharing your stories, that just brings more awareness. And then with the awareness, we can hopefully educate other professionals to better help experiencers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it could be also interesting to have this experiencer maybe interact through your organization with other experiencer, like
Yeah. Hmm.
because then they understand they are not alone, and they don't have to go and maybe give an interview as I'm giving, but they can learn a little bit, and they can say, oh yeah, I recognize that symptom, I recognize that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Definitely the validating their experience, and so they definitely don't feel alone. That would be very obvious first steps for them.
And I can close with this, which is recently I met a friend who is also a full professor, actually in a university in South California, and I started talking about this thing, and he said, well, when I was a child, a number of times I was waking up paralyzed, only my eyes, I could only open my eyes and move my eyes, and there was this light being, I mean, looking at me on a corner of the room. I never felt threatened. This is what he said, but I was paralyzed. So I wonder how many of these people are out there, you know?
I
So
think there's more than we know, and they've just been reluctant to come forward.
yeah. Well,
But
I
hope,
really hope you can help many to come out.
yeah, well, that's our goal. Well, I really appreciate your time spending with us to share your story. I wanted to let you know if there's anything in here that you want edited, we won't put this up for about 48 hours.
Okay.
So we just wanted to let you know in case that was something you wanted to
I
do.
don't
But
know.
other, mhm.
Yeah, if you think you can keep all the content, for me, it's fine. If you want to cut something out because you think it's too extreme or too spiritual or whatever,
But
um,
from your side,
from
if
my
there's
side,
anything that you want to recant.
not really. No, I'm
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, great. Well, again, thank you so much for your time and best wishes.
Yeah, thank you to you too.